Scarborough, just outside Toronto in Canada. I used to come here a lot when I was a little boy. Lived in England, quite a restless upbringing. Sitting in the school class, looking out the window, not paying attention to the teacher. I really just wanted to be outside. A good friend and I, we used to go looking for birds' nests. And if the nests had eggs in them, we would take one. And my pride and joy was my collection of birds' eggs. But then when I got to, 18 or 19, I began to realise how cruel it was. So then I started watching the birds instead, and that's what started my passion for bird watching. So I used to come over here every summertime and was amazed by the wide open spaces, the fresh air. Began to really get into nature and bird watching, and I couldn't wait to move over here when I left school. It's all I could think about. Getting away from grey, overpopulated England to the wilds of Canada. And I've lived here ever since. The world we live in is shared among many other living things. Wherever we go, they are there. Many of us don't see them when they pass us by, but there are many who know where to find them. This is a really good spot in these trees over here. One of the most exciting things about coming down here is you never know what you're going to hear. You just walk around and there's so many different calls coming out of the trees and out of the bushes. And then suddenly, bang, you'll hear something that's really rare. And that's when it gets exciting for me because, then you've got to go and find it. Or just be really patient until it comes out to you.
You have to sharpen your senses. You have to be able to see things that other people don't see and hear things that other people don't hear.
So this place we're in is called Tommy Thompson Park. And the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority are doing a great job managing this land and making it into a haven for birds and other animals. There's mink and coyote living down here, foxes, raccoons, and lots of birds. Lots and lots of birds.
So the number varies throughout the year. Recorded information that we have is there's been at least 400 species of birds seen in the Toronto area, of which from those 400, about 200 species breed in and around the Toronto area. But a number of birds will either stay here for the winter, or they might migrate through Toronto up to the boreal forest, or up even to the Canadian Arctic. So a lot of our Canadian birds and our Toronto birds are migrants. So we have a lot of birds here for a short period of time in the spring and summer, and then they're moving back out to more warmer areas when the time arrives.
And so we are lucky to be in the place to see their journey.
Isn't that the wonderful thing about this city? Toronto has so much nature to it. There's trees and green spaces, and a lot of it was planned, but a lot of it has just sort of snuck up on us. And this place, High Park, is known, as far as I know, all over the world for its variety and its trees and flowers and its birds.
Toronto's on this wonderful pathway or migratory flyway, and in the spring, birds are coming up, they're going around the lake or coming into the lake. Toronto still has, fortunately, a lot of green space. They have a lot of ravines which are running sort of in a north direction, so that helps funnel birds to areas farther north. But I think it's that sort of positioning of the Great Lakes that tends to congregate birds in this area, and then those birds can move further up north, or when they're migrating south, the lake sort of stops them. They concentrate in and around southern Ontario, and then they pass on over the lake when it's safer to do so. I think one of the biggest challenges we face is more and more people are moving into this urban environment, and because of that, they can be losing touch with the outdoors and the beauty of nature unless we can find ways to excite them to go back out and enjoy their time. So what we're really doing, I think, as a group, is trying to excite people to not just stay in the city, not just watch television the whole time or sit on your computer, but actually go outside and see the beauty around you. It's an incredible, it'll make you feel better. A walk in fresh air is way better than sitting on your couch.
Their devotion to discovery led them into a life of serious birding. There's a bird calling there called a warbling vireo. And it's somewhere up in the trees looking for caterpillars. Common grackles, yellow warblers, warbling vireos. There's a pair of blue-grey gnatcatchers living in those woods. There's a pair of common flickers. There's some woodcocks in the grass on the other side. There's some sparrows, starlings. That was a least flycatcher calling. I think that's probably nesting here. And these are red-winged blackbirds calling. They're gorgeous. They're all black and they've got a blazing red stripe on their shoulder. And when the males are displaying, they puff their wings out, and this red and orange stripe just stands out in the sunlight. It's against the black background. It's beautiful. There's a force that draws these birders into the natural world, even with all of its challenges. I had to crawl through the bushes because I could hear it calling in the thick vegetation, but I couldn't see it. And it would have been a lifer for me, which means I've never seen it before. So it was pretty important to see the actual bird. So I got down on my stomach and I crawled through the undergrowth. And with the help of another guy who was already in there, we eventually saw the bird hopping around. But when I got home that night, I was just sitting having my dinner and I scratched myself and I pulled up my t-shirt and I saw a couple of legs sticking out of my stomach, only tiny little insect legs. And I thought, oh my God, it's a tick. So I went to the hospital and I got it removed that evening.
How do I feel? Well, I get all excited. I'm basically a great big kid at heart. So when an eagle flies over, I'll jump out of my chair and run around and say, oh, look, there's an eagle, there's an eagle. And so does everybody else. So I'm still passionate about doing this. And sometimes when I do drive to see a bird I've never seen before, I do get fairly excited about that because that's a big deal. That's called a lifer, and most birders keep a list of their lifers, birds they've seen for the first time. And I've got mine at home in a really old book, and it's almost full. So if I want more lifers, I'm going to have to go somewhere else.
Not only are there flocks of birds migrating in and out of the city in the spring, there are groups of curious birdwatchers joining together to see them. In the early morning, people of different ages and cultures gather in a group to go on a hike with their bird leader.
Hopefully it's not a squirrel or a chipmunk.
For today, my name's Howard Shapiro, and I've been a member of the TOC, I don't know how long, probably 15, 20 years. So this is one of many hikes that the Toronto Ornithological Club does throughout the year at different parts in Toronto, which are usually the better birding spots in the city.
What we do here, and some of the things that I participate in other seasons, isn't really bird watching as most people think about it. This is what we call citizen science, and what we're doing is hopefully contributing to the conservation of bird species. So I feel like giving back. So I come out here and I do the recording. Nobody pays me, but I am passionate about it. I believe in doing something for the birds that we have here, something that's going to protect them and maybe even increase their numbers. So hopefully my findings, or our findings, that go down to this central agency down in the States will go towards conserving their habitat, which is the main problem with wild birds. They're losing their habitat every year. So we think we're doing something good for birds, in other words.
I think my favorite bird changes depending on what I get excited about. This summer was definitely the piping plover, because for the first time in 80 years we had successful nesting of piping plovers on Hanlon's Point.
Most of the time, the leader tracks birds for the group.
What was that?
That's a peewee.
Oh, and that's the peewee.
Yeah. It says its name, P-E-W-E-E.
Ah, that's my problem.
But it's eastern wood peewee. So what do you got, folks?
White-breasted nuthatch.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes it's the group members joining all together to help their leader see.
Oh, I can't see it still. That's okay. Okay. Oh, you're under it? Okay. Oh, yeah. So you got a white-breasted nuthatch up there? Oh, there it is. Oh, that's an American redstart. It's another warbler. Yeah, that could be a female or a first-year male. So this is the area where the owls were. And they're usually here starting around December, and the young fledge sometime early in the spring. And so you could hear them calling, you could see the young, see them going back and forth. But they dispersed since then, and usually owls don't want to be seen because other birds don't like them too much. Got a red-bellied woodpecker.
A chance encounter with a single bird triggers that joyful child in all of them,
Yeah, no, that's a good bird.
playing the game of treasure hunt.
When somebody says,
Birding for me was really a family affair. My father was a veterinarian by profession, but on the side loved birds. And he loved birds all his life. So family vacations were centered around birding trips, or I went out with him a lot as a young child to look for bird nests. And he was also a photographer, and he wanted to photograph the nests and eggs of all of the Ontario birds, and at one point all of North American birds. So we spent a lot of time out in different areas in different parts of the country looking for bird nests and photographing birds. And it was something that I fell in love with as well, and made a career out of it as a result.
Well, this was the book. It was called, if I might throw in a plug, Birds of America. Great big book. Weighed about 3 pounds, and it wouldn't stay open because it was new. And I was just a little guy about this high. So I used to get it down on the floor, and I'd open up the pages, and I'd lie on top of it so it'd stay open, and then I'd memorize the pictures, because they're beautiful, full-color pictures drawn by an artist. And by the time I was done, I remembered every single bird that was pictured in that book. I couldn't read the words, of course, but I still have the book, and I still read it from time to time. So that planted the seeds. And of course, I didn't run right out the next day, buy myself a pair of binoculars, and start watching birds. But I always liked to be outside, and my dad and my granddad made sure that I learned a lot about nature. And I guess the first time I ever went to Point Pelee to do some real serious bird watching was round about the same time I got married. And I took my wife there for our honeymoon. She's never forgiven me. But I learned from all the people at Point Pelee who are real serious bird watchers just what a bird watcher does. And you'll be scratching your head.
And so it seems that we have been enchanted by birds for a very long time. Once a year, people gather to celebrate the arrival of birds in different parks in the city. It is the perfect time for all the people with the same passion to reunite and share what they know.
So the loggerhead shrike, it's a critically endangered songbird in Ontario. So last year we found 26 pairs breeding in the wild.
In this field, we have 57 boxes, and on the other side of the yacht club, we have about 15 more. So we have about 65, 66, 67 or so in the park. And we call this the swallow field. And the birds you see on the boxes are called tree swallows. We have 4 types of swallow that breed in the park, but the tree swallow is a really interesting bird. It's the first swallow to appear in the park. They don't have to go very far south to winter. They go to the southern states, Central America. Because of increased use of pesticides in agriculture, we have fewer insects. This is a global phenomenon, affects all insectivores, martins and swifts and swallows. So this is a way of building up the population, or our little park to it. And over the years that we've had the boxes here, we reckon we've reared about 800 to 1,000 youngsters.
As temperatures fall, birds fly back towards the south and pass through Toronto. And once again, bird watchers gather up and head outside to see the fall migration. Up there right now, there's a sharp-shinned hawk mobbing a crow. So maybe the sharp-shinned hawk has some youngsters in the area, and it's just pushing the crow away from its offspring, because crows feed on young birds.
Oh, I thought that might be a hawk. It's just a seagull. Never mind swinging that camera around. Hawks, as we see them here, of course, every single one of them are predators. Instead of eating grass or buds or plants, they eat other animals. The smaller ones will go after insects, and the big ones, they go after each other. The big fella we might see here, and I hope you get him on camera, is a red-tail. He's so big a lot of people think he's an eagle, and he's here because of the squirrels in High Park. He likes squirrels and chipmunks. So that's typical behavior of a hawk. It's the world's nastiest bird eating the world's cutest animals.
Yeah, birding really for me is getting outside and just going for a walk. And birding is going to be different for everybody. You might like to set up a bird feeder in your backyard just to look at the cardinals and the sparrows coming to your backyard. Or if you dig into it a little deeper, you can become, a very serious birder, which is trying to find 300 species of birds in the Ontario area, in a year. So the level of birding can be whatever you want it to be, but really it's about getting outside, engaging with nature, becoming a better observer of the world around you, because that's pretty exciting. If you actually go out and start looking around, there's this incredible world out there. And I think birding helps bring that to a lot of people. Because once you get onto the birds, you'll then start to see the butterflies and the plants and the dragonflies. It really is a great opportunity to get outside and just see more of the world around you and feel better as a result. We have this wonderful collection where we can invite researchers in, or artists can come in, or school groups can come in, learn more about birds. So the idea is we make this material available, and each one of these specimens is a moment in time. So for DNA research, for instance, you can take a little piece of tissue from one of these birds and look at the genomic makeup or look at different chemical isotopes in these birds to learn more about what these birds and what the environment looked like when these birds were living. So we have this wonderful repository at the museum where not only can we teach, but we can also learn. And it's this way of further engaging people with the outdoors. And it's always exciting to come in this room and look at this wonderful collection. There's over 140,000 birds in this room. We have other rooms with egg collections and with nest collections and skeletons. So we have a wide range of material for people to use and to learn from.
What can we learn from birds? That is a very complicated question. We can learn that we can't do without them, because without birds and without nature, life would be a pretty crummy place to live, I think anyway. They're what makes nature beautiful, and if they all go, it'll be too late to bring them back. You know what they say, you don't miss your water till the well runs dry. So they're important for, I guess, an aesthetic reason. If birds disappear, it's partly because insects have disappeared as well, and if they disappear, we're going to lose all our plants because they're pollinators. So everything depends on everything else. Birds are just a link in the chain, but if the chain is broken, we're in big trouble.
In the cold, harsh winter, we hide, and they hide too, to keep ourselves warm. This is a great time to see the shorebirds that fly south from the Arctic. Because of the lack of food in the winter, we can provide bird feeders in our homes to invite birds into our backyards so we can enjoy the wonderful view.
The number of birds in general has declined in some cases by as much as 75% in the last 2 decades. In other words, we're running out of birds. That's because of a decrease in their habitat, places where they can live, and because of decreases in their food supply, because of things like neonicotinoid insecticides. That has not been proven, but it's suspected to cause the demise of as much as 90% of our honeybees, for example. And birds eat bugs, except for hawks, of course. All in all, they've declined, both in their wintering grounds down south, Mexico, South America, and in the summering grounds up here. Talk to anybody who's older than 50, and they'll say that years and years ago, there were a lot many birds than there are now.
One of the things I would like to talk about is birding for many years has been restricted to, a small group of people. And I would love to see that broaden out. I would love to see kids getting outdoors more, new immigrants coming into Canada and discovering the wealth of nature that we have here. Because I think if we can inspire people and excite people about nature, they're going to care more. And I think we really need nature. We are nature. And we depend on so much of the world around us that we take for granted. And so the more people realize that, the more people engage with that, I think they fall in love with it as well and then respect it more.
Well, now I'm all grown up and I've been living in Toronto for 30 years. But I remember a story my grandfather used to tell me back in England. He was a coal miner, and when they went down the pit, they would take a canary with them in a cage. And if the canary died whilst they were down there, that was an indication that they had to get out of the pit quickly because the air was getting poisoned. That story, or that message that the canary gave us, is even more poignant now than ever before. We're damaging our planet.